the Democrats and left-wing media activists, I should say, have been, in many cases, demonizing National Guard troops. Here's JB Pritzker claiming that Trump's deployment of the National Guard was an attack on the American people and will be used to stop the 2026 elections.
Other than fighting crime. That's the first thing they should understand. The second is it's an attack on the American people by the President of the United States. Now, he may disagree with a state that didn't vote for him, but should he be sending troops in? No.
You said he has other aims. What are the other aims?
The other aims are that he'd like to stop the elections in 2026 or, frankly, take control of those elections.
Look, I know it's early into the investigation that will no doubt take place. We don't know what the motive is yet, but you hear that message on repeat. You tell that message to Americans on repeat. It just takes one psychopath to become violent.
Do you know how out of touch with reality you have to be to think that Donald Trump called in the National Guard in the nation's capital to try to take control of the 2026 election? I mean, is that what JB Pritzker just said? I mean, I'm trying to make sure that my earpiece is incorrect.
No, that was correct.
I mean, the orders of magnitude of lunacy, of left-wing echo chamber from MS Now, MSNBC, whatever they're calling it, the level of delusion that you have to consume in your media diet to actually make that assertion ostensibly without any hint of irony there is just utterly astounding. And yes, you're totally right that the left-wing media complex has been demonizing the National Guard ever since Donald Trump a few months ago decided to launch this righteous operation, I might say. The nation's capital has become not just a laughingstock, it's become a crime-ridden hellhole. It's actually gotten a lot better, by the way, since the National Guard took over there. There's been all sorts of data indicating that violent crime, property crime, indeed have declined since the National Guard actually went into the streets there. So, I mean, what in the world are they doing there? But more generally speaking, whether it's the demonization of the National Guard, whether it's the demonization of President Trump himself, haven't these people learned their lesson? Haven't we seen that bad things happen when you demonize your political opposition to this level there? You would have thought that maybe Democrats would have learned their lesson when it comes to Donald Trump after the near assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, or perhaps after the second attempted assassination in West Palm Beach, Florida, just over a year ago. If nothing else, Gabriella, after the actual assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk, the most high-profile political assassination in America since Martin Luther King Jr. and RFK back in 1968. This rhetoric is insane. It is insane and is quite literally getting people killed. And I will repeat the message that I've been saying for many months now, which is, are there any senior statesmen left on the Democratic side of the aisle, anyone, whether it's a Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, whoever has some kind of gravitas with that party, to just get there and say, stop demonizing law enforcement, stop demonizing the military, stop demonizing the political opposition, calling them a bunch of Nazis, Hitlerites, Stalinists, whatever. It's crazy and it's horrifying. And until that happens, Gabriella, I fear this is just not going to stop.
Oh, absolutely. It is so horrifying. It hasn't even been 3 months since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. We look at the left-wing media coverage frequently. The coverage has been awful. We just played earlier on the show a guest on CNN comparing National Guard troops to Nazis. And let's just look at the live coverage of the tragedy that unfolded today on ABC.
Focus will turn to whether these guardsmen were specifically targeted. If that's the case, it would fit with what we've been hearing from law enforcement officials for a number of months now, that some political flashpoints in the country, whether that's immigration policies by the administration, the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, even amid a tenuous ceasefire, those kinds of flashpoints have made people in uniform, be they military, law enforcement, government officials, people in uniform, have increasingly been targets. And that is going to be one focus of the investigation going forward.
Yeah, I mean, 2 National Guard troops were just shot while, serving and trying to protect America. You mentioned Charlie Kirk. It hasn't even been 3 months since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, was killed for speaking the truth. He was demonized for a long time. He still is. And we've seen Donald Trump. He's been compared to Hitler countless times by parts of the left, whether it's the media, some Democrats. He survived an assassination attempt, as you spoke about. Are we ever going to see the left turn down the temperature when it comes down to its messaging?
I mean, Gabriella, there's too many examples to count. I mean, Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk are the most high-profile ones. How about the slaughter of the 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. back in May? That was a left-wing, pro-Palestine fanatic. There was the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh on the U.S. Supreme Court in 2022. There was the shooting up of the Republican congressional baseball team back in 2017, almost fatally wounding Steve Scalise. I mean, on and on we go. I mean, there's just too many examples there. I mean, how about all of the violent attacks on Tesla vehicles earlier this year, simply because Elon Musk had the temerity to sign up to help his country in patriotic fashion by trying to trim some fat out of the federal budget. So the left has a violent streak. We know that because they've literally had that since the advent of what it even means to be on the left during the French Revolutionary period, the old school Jacobins and Robespierre's reign of terror. So modern leftism started with a violent flair, and that unfortunately very much continues today. They're always trying to get some sort of next revolution in their addle-brained minds there. Again, I don't think this is going to get any better. I would very much like to say that it's going to get any better, but unless and until the American left, and that really in this case I think means Democratic Party leaders, get a hold of their base, because their base is so far out there, Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Their base is so far out there. The polls just show this over and over again. There was a poll out of Harvard University a few months ago, around the time of Charlie's assassination. This poll out of Harvard, I think it was even after Charlie's assassination, this poll out of Harvard said that roughly 1/3, 33 to 35% of Harvard students think that violence can indeed, yes, it can be appropriate to prevent a speaker from speaking at Harvard University campus. This is Harvard, okay? This is the most famous university arguably in the world. Something is deeply, deeply, deeply malfunctioning in the American left-wing brain, and it calls for leaders, if there are any left, to speak up with all the might they've got.
Absolutely. It's absolutely terrifying. Josh, I want to get your thoughts on the Seditious Six, as they're known now. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has slammed the group of Democrats who created this video that appeared to be actively encouraging current service members to disobey orders from Donald Trump. Let's take a look.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
Only there have not been illegal orders. But this is what Pete Hegseth had to say on X. He wrote, the despicable video urging Department of War troops to refuse illegal orders may seem harmless to civilians, but it carries a different weight inside the military. This was a politically motivated influence operation. It never named a specific illegal order. It created ambiguity rather than clarity. It used carefully scripted legal-sounding language. It subtly reframed military obedience around partisan distrust instead of established legal processes. In the military, vague rhetoric and ambiguity undermines trust, creates hesitation in the chain of command, and erodes cohesion. The military already has clear procedures for handling unlawful orders. It does not need political actors injecting doubt into an already clear chain of command. As veterans of various sorts, the Seditious Six knew exactly what they were doing, sowing doubt through a politically motivated influence operation. The Department of War won't fall for it or stand for it. Josh, can I get your reaction to this?
Yeah, it's hard to know where to begin. I mean, really, it's hard to know where to begin here. I mean, this is so egregious that there's just so many different layers to the egregiousness. First of all, they can't name a single illegal order, as we just saw Secretary Hegseth say. Two, even if there were to be an order that an officer, using all of his or her good faith, thought was actually illegal, as Hegseth again alludes to, there are well-established procedures for this. You take your objection, your possible quibble, to a military court, to a military tribunal. There are indeed established procedures for trying to do this sort of thing. The alternative is that there are no procedures, which takes us to the land of a Nazi or communist regime, which seems to be the not so subtle implication that is lurking in the background of this whole video, is that they really are analogizing the current United States military to the Third Reich, to the Wehrmacht, right? I mean, to their military, to the communist armed forces there, because when you start emphasizing this, what you're really saying is that there is no greater moral or legal authority in the United States Armed Forces, the most effective fighting force in the entire history of mankind, than there is with the Nazis or the communists. So it is just so utterly loathsome. There's also the idea that if an officer has a lawful order and refuses to actually abide by his superior, there's actually a separate crime for that. It's called mutiny. And mutiny in the United States carries a very, very, very severe punishment, potentially up to and including death, if it is actually taken to its logical conclusion. We haven't had such a case in many years there. It seems like these Democrats actually want to see that happen. So by far, the most likely outcome, if God forbid some mistaken officer in the military actually takes the seditious six at the word, by far the most likely outcome would actually be a mutiny prosecution there. And these Democrats would be nowhere to be found. I mean, they're just doing this for pure political point scoring. The silver lining here is that the Department of War, as we just saw, is taking this quite seriously. Looks like Mark Kelly is being individually investigated for possible court-martialing there in the United States Navy, where he is a retired captain. I would personally very much like to see that. At a bare minimum, when it comes to the senators there, Kelly and Slotkin, they have completely desecrated the integrity of the United States Senate, which once upon a time was known as the world's greatest deliberative body. And if I were advising John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, I would essentially say as follows: you ought to hold a vote ASAP to expel these two people, because they have desecrated in irrevocable fashion, I would say, the integrity of the United States Senate. This is completely inexcusable. And the final thing I will say is that this really ought to expose the lie that there are such things, for the most part, as moderate Democrats these days. Mark Kelly of Arizona and Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan are from swing states here. Arizona and Michigan are two of the major swing states. And they've been sold to us as moderate Democrats there. No, they're not. They're literally encouraging insurrection. Yeah. They're encouraging mutiny. With the exception of maybe John Fetterman, maybe, and like maybe one or two others there really aren't moderate Democrats. That kind of gets us back to our previous conversation, that who is the actual moderate statesman who can call up political violence? How can you do that when you're literally calling for a military insurrection on these propagandistic videos? I mean, the whole thing is just awful, but that's what we're dealing with, Gabriella. They are a radicalized bunch.
Yeah, 100%. We keep saying that. Look, Donald Trump has revealed his plans to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organisation. The White House said in a statement that President Trump is confronting the Muslim Brotherhood's transnational network, which fuels terrorism and destabilisation campaigns against US interests and allies in the Middle East. Now, this designation would make it illegal to provide support for the group, would also lead to economic sanctions, of course, banning its members from entering the United States. Josh, your reaction, how significant is this?
Well, it's very good, and it's something that many of us have been calling for a very, very long time. I've been calling to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization for probably a decade. I mean, the UAE has done it. Saudi Arabia has done it. There are any number of non-Islamist Arab countries that have done it, so it makes no sense whatsoever as to why the United States would be taking a friendlier attitude towards the Muslim Brotherhood, or frankly, towards the Muslim Brotherhood's American offshoot, which is CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which actually was declared itself a terrorist organization by the UAE back in 2014. It makes no sense why the United States would ever have a friendlier posture, friendlier stance towards these organizations than various other Arab countries. So it's very good insofar as it goes. The only problem is that it does not go far enough. So what they basically did, Gabrielle, the way that the Muslim Brotherhood operates is it essentially operates as a franchise network where you have various offshoots in certain jurisdictions that then get the Muslim Brotherhood franchise. So for instance, Hamas is probably the most well-known Muslim Brotherhood offshoot for the Palestinian Arabs. So what the executive order does is it singles out a handful of Muslim Brotherhood chapters, namely Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan, and says that these are indeed foreign terrorist organizations. Again, that should have happened a long time ago, but it's very good. I mean, certainly better late than never. But in order to really have true teeth here, you're going to have to go after the Brotherhood where they are financially and ideologically sponsored. And that means really two countries above all. It means Turkey and it means Qatar. That's complicated because the United States has nuclear weapons in Turkey. Turkey is also part of NATO. Qatar is an infamously thorny situation where there is the Al Udeid American Air Base there. Trump signed this NATO Article 5 style mutual defense pledge to Qatar a few months ago there. So that, to me, is where the rubber meets the road, is can this administration really stare down Qatar and Turkey as being the duplicitous actors that they are when it comes to funding and disseminating the seeds of horrific Islamism and the Brotherhood the world over? That will be fascinating to see. But for now, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
And just finally, there's been a breakthrough in the war between Russia and Ukraine. This week, Trump directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to travel to Moscow for talks with Putin on the emerging agreement to end the war in Ukraine. And Trump seems pretty optimistic. He posted that over the past week, my team has tremendous prospects with respect to ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. And he said that the original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the US, has been fine-tuned with additional input from both sides. And there are only a few remaining points of disagreement. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages. Look, he certainly deserves credit as a peacemaker around the world, doesn't he, Josh?
Oh yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, this has been the most difficult deal for him to reach. I mean, he's reached any number of other peace deals, certainly since he took over back in January, whether it is Thailand and Cambodia or Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Congo and Rwanda, India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear powers there, the Iran-Israel war back in June. So he's done this many times, but Russia-Ukraine continues to be the really, 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 really difficult one. And it's really difficult for a lot of reasons, that you have two sides that simply just don't want to give in. Now, Trump is trying really, really hard there. I mean, he met with Putin in Alaska, and then the following Monday, he met with Zelensky, flanked by various major European leaders, Meloni of Italy, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, etc., all there at the White House. That was back in August, if memory serves. So he's trying really, really hard here. Now, Ukraine, if I understand correctly, the U.S. had this 28-point plan. They trimmed it down to a 19-point plan. They made some concessions to Zelensky and the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have tentatively accepted this. What I am seeing, Gabriella, and I think the New York Post actually reported this, is that Russia is set to reject this current iteration of the deal. So we will see. That's not confirmed yet, but what I've heard and what the New York Post is reporting is that Putin is set to reject this current iteration of the deals. We might just get back to where we started. And that's unfortunate because this war has gone on for way, way, way too long. This February, God forbid, if the war is still going on, it will be 4 years since Putin invaded the Donbass and Crimea back in February of 2022. The war has to end, and has to end, frankly, for Ukraine's own sake, because this is going to take Ukraine a half century, at least, frankly, to try to recover from the human casualties, the mass population exodus, the flights of human capital, social capital, financial capital. I mean, it's been an utter and complete disaster for Ukraine and for Russia, although that they are clearly the aggressor in this conflict. But the war has to end, and I think that we should all be praying that it does there. But to your point, certainly Donald Trump deserves credit, if nothing else. He really has tried quite hard to get a deal here.
Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gabriella.